Okay, boys and girls, we are ready to start our clay cupcakes. I'm so excited. I know this is going to be tons of fun. Okay, so let me show you some supplies I'm using to begin with. I have a dowel rod that we can use to roll clay with. I have a carving tool that we can carve away into clay with. When you do that, it's called subtractive methods. You're pulling away, you're subtracting from your sculpture. I've got texture making tools for the end of the project to add details. I've got something called slip. Slip is a muddy form of clay with lots of water in it. It's kind of gross, but it's used as an adhesive or like a glue for adding pieces to your project. I have a piece of canvas that's going to keep the clay from sticking to my table. And then lastly, oh, not lastly, I have a cupcake mold, which is actually, you can bake in these, real cupcakes in the oven, and then you can peel this cupcake mold off, and it serves as that cupcake cup that you would normally throw away, but then you don't need one and you can reuse this again and again. And lastly, clay. Clay is made up of broken rock, little pieces of rock that's millions of years old, that's used in a moist form. So it's when water is added to it. That's all clay is, broken rock and water. What's cool about that is when clay hardens and we think we can't use it anymore, we can add water to it, let it sit for a while, and then it will turn soft again and pliable, and we can use it as clay again, which is kind of cool. When you first get your clay, your job is to knead and wedge your clay, kind of like pizza dough. You fold it in half, you take the palms of your hands, and you push into the clay. You're gonna have to stand up to do this. And then you can pull the clay back again, and you can push it again with your, this. Now my clay's a little on the dry side, so I added just a little bit of that slippy water to it, and I can go ahead and push with my hands, fold it over, again, push with my hands, and I want to do this for a couple minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, till I get all the air bubbles out. That's my goal, getting all the air bubbles out of this clay. Super important. We don't want projects with air bubbles trapped inside. Let me tell you why. When you bake a cupcake, you bake it in an oven at 350 degrees. When you bake a clay cupcake, you bake it in a kiln, which is like a big oven, but at like 1500 degrees, really hot, sometimes almost 2000 degrees. Air bubbles that are trapped will expand. They will grow when they're heated. So if they're in a space this size, inside your clay project, let's pretend, I know that's kind of big, but let's pretend, and the air heats up and it expands to be bigger than the space it's in, what's gonna happen? Your project's gonna crack and possibly explode. The worst part is that if it explodes, the shrapnel hits all the projects around it and hurts them. We don't want that. So we are going to knead and wedge our clay. After we knead and wedge our clay, we are ready to begin building. Okay, boys and girls, we are going to go ahead and make a clay cupcake. What I have here is already finished. I want to go ahead and show you how I made it. So to begin with, we're going to take some clay about the size of a little bit bigger than a golf ball. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. My clay is a little bit dry from sitting out. It's already been kneaded and wedged. But I'm going to go ahead and squish it into a ball, and I want my ball to be just a little bit bigger than a golf ball, which is what I have right here. I'm going to go ahead and make my pinch pot. A pinch pot you make by taking your thumbs and pressing them down into the center of a ball of clay, and as you push down with your thumbs, you pinch out with your fingers. And you don't want to go through the bottom. But I want to do that until I've got a little bowl like this, a little pinch pot. What I can do next is I can take my silicone cupcake base. It's like a liner. I can go ahead and push my pinch pot inside. It should fit right inside like that. And I can press my pinch pot into the side of the silicone cupcake liner. And I want to press real good so I get those lines that make the liner look like a liner, those folds, those indentations into the side of my clay. But I don't want to press it all the way through. After I do that, I can take a pair of scissors, and I'm trusting you not to cut, please, please, please do not cut my silicone cupcake base, okay? But you can go ahead and trim off the top of your cupcake. Then I can pull off the rubber, it stretches, and I should have a little mini cupcake liner in clay. Okay, so that's step one. Right away, put your initials into the bottom of that piece. Okay, boys and girls, now that we've made the clay cupcake base, we're gonna work on making the clay cupcake top. And I've kneaded and wedged this clay already. My clay keeps getting dry from sitting out as I'm working on making these videos. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the similar size ball of clay, which is the size a little bit bigger than a golf ball. And I'm gonna go ahead and press into my clay again to make a pinch pot. And as I press down, I'm pressing out as well, pinching. This time I'm gonna pinch a little bit longer because I'm not putting it in the silicone lining. And what I'm gonna go ahead and do now is turn it over, and you can see it's got a square bottom. I need to start shaping this part of it so it looks more like a cupcake top. Now I may get some cracks. I can take some slip or some water and I can help mend those by pushing the clay back together again. And I'm gonna keep shaping it. I can get some scissors out because it's getting a little funny and lopsided to make it a little bit more straight around the bottom. As my clay cracks, I can kind of pinch it back together. So I think I've got a pretty good size for a cupcake top for my cupcake liner. The next thing I'm going to do is take some clay. I'm going to add a little bit of water to this clay. These are scraps that I had left over from my last demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and take my clay, and I'm going to roll what's called a coil of clay. So I'm adding water, and I'm basically making a worm. And I'm going to go ahead and roll this out on my canvas so it doesn't stick to the table. What we're going to do is put a rim on like the lid of our cupcake, on the top of it. What's cool about these cupcakes is they'll actually be like little containers that you could store things in, little treasures, which is kind of fun. They're not just to look at, they're actually functional. That means they're art that you can use. They have a function or a purpose. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll a coil out big enough to go around the bottom of my cupcake top. All right, so I've got one. Now my job is to slip and squirt on or stick it together so it stays. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a knife or anything that's got a sharp edge and put a bunch of marks along the two surfaces that I'm attaching. So along the coil and along the bottom of the cupcake top. Basically, when you attach two things together and you stick them together like this, they stick, two flat surfaces. If you stick things together like this, they stick better because now they're grooved, there's more surfaces touching than this. That's what we're doing to our clay. So I'm gonna take some of this yucky slip stuff, that muddy wet clay that acts like a glue, and I'm gonna go ahead, I put it on all my grooved surfaces I just made, and I'm going to stick my coil using a little bit of pressure to the edge of my cupcake top. Now my coil just broke a little bit, that's not a problem. I'm gonna go ahead and just stick it back in place. And then I can pinch it down. Now I can try to get rid of that rim if I want to, that line between the two, or I can leave it if I think it looks good and that's what I want it to look like for decoration purposes, I can leave it. But if you want to smooth it over, you can take your thumb and kind of go over the tops of those lines. And that's just going to help make the bottom of your cupcake top be uniform. The coil will make it uniform and nice. Most importantly, it will just help it sit better on top of your cupcake base or liner. Okay, now the fun part, decorating the top of the cupcake. Be super creative, add figurines, candles, whatever you'd like to, decorative icing, sprinkles, you name it, you do it. You make it super interesting like you did in your brainstorm ideas. Anytime you remove clay from a sculpture, it's called subtractive. Anytime you add clay to it to build onto it, it's called additive. I want you to try both those processes. If I'm going to cut out of my clay to make like some fancy icing, thick icing, whoops, see what I just did? I went through my clay. That is not what I want to do. Not at all what I want to do. So if your cupcake's kind of thin, be really careful when you carve into it. So I'm going to go ahead and carve some marks in here so you can see what I'm talking about with making icing. And if you change the direction of them, they'll look a little bit more like the designs that are in cupcakes. But you can see those ridges I added by just carving with this wire tool and then going over it with water to smooth it out. Anytime you do a clay project, you want to make it nice and smooth. So there we go. And I can go ahead and keep carving into it to subtract clay. The next thing that you can do is add clay to your project using slipping and scoring. Like the top of this example is a cherry. I'll show you how to attach a cherry to the top. I'm going to go ahead and carve into the bottom of the cherry that I just rolled, just like I did when I added that coil to the bottom of the cupcake top, and add some lines. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the top here, like that. I'm going to take some slip and attach it right on top. The last thing I want to show you today is how to go ahead and add texture to your cupcake. I've got like brushes and combs and all kinds of cool things to poke into the clay. If you want it to make, sprinkles or anything like that, you can go ahead and press right into the clay and get some cool effects like that. Or if, for instance, the liner did not make cool indents into the bottom of your cupcake liner like you wanted it to, you can go ahead and take a comb, a thick comb, and you can add those lines in for yourself. And then take some water, smooth it out, and you'll be all set. Make sure no matter what, at the end, that you have your initials in the bottom of it.